You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. And now, it's time for the show that breaks down the options market from unusual activity alerts to market analysis, strategy overviews, listener questions, and much more. If it involves puts and calls, then our all-star panel will break it down. It's time to hit the Option Block with your host, Mark Longo from the Options Insider Media Group, and co-hosts Uncle Mike Tosaw from St. Charles Wealth Management, Mark the Greasy Meatball Sebastian from OptionPit.com, Andrew the Rock Lobster Giovinazzi from OptionPit.com, and Henry the Flowmaster Schwartz from Cboe. The Option Block is brought to you by Cboe. Cboe's suite of S&P 500 index options, SPX and mini S&P 500 XSP options, allows traders to speculate on the direction of the market, generate income, and hedge for downside protection of their portfolio of stocks. No matter what kind of trader you are, there's plenty of useful information to take the guesswork out of creating your portfolio strategy and to help you make more educated moves in the market. Visit www.cboe.com/SPX today to learn more. The views expressed herein are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views of Cboe Global Markets Incorporated or any of its subsidiaries, collectively Cboe. The information provided is for general education and information purposes only. There are important risks associated with transacting in any of the Cboe products or any of the digital assets discussed here. Before engaging in any transactions in those products or digital assets, it is important for market participants to carefully review the disclosures and disclaimers contained at www.cboe.com/US_disclaimers. These products and digital assets are complex and are suitable only for sophisticated market participants. These products involve the risk of loss, which can be substantial and, depending on the type of product, can exceed the amount of money deposited in establishing the position. Market participants should put at risk only funds they can afford to lose without affecting their lifestyle. And now, get ready to hit the Option Block.
All right, everybody. That music means we are back once again. It is Thursday, time for everyone's favorite bi-weekly source for all things options related. Yep, it is time for the Option Block, what the cool kids call the old OB. My name, of course, Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, as well as from the network upon which all of you folks are binging these days. Of course, speaking of the network, man, just continues to grow. We added the European market brief not too long ago, the futures rundown not too long before that, and that wasn't enough. The third new show hitting last week, the Hot Options Report. If you like the Option Block, you're guaranteed to like that show because we kind of took a snippet of the Option Block and blew it up into its own show. So a lot of you have been asking us for years for, hey, can you take some of that data you talk about and do a full rundown for the full day and cut it out into its own show? We said, yes, we can do that. When the folks Republic were down for it as well. So we said, hey, you know what? Let's do that. So that's hitting every day now on the network. Of course, if you're hanging out in the Pro, you get to hear it recorded early, as well as everything else we do, Pro Q&As, everything else, theoptionsinsider.com/pro, the place to go to learn more. As we learn who's joining us on the old program today, first we go out to the hallowed halls of Cboe East, where we are joined by none other than the Flowmaster himself, standing in front of the proverbial wall of flow, Mr. Henry Schwartz from Cboe. Mr. Flowmaster, welcome back to the show, sir.
Good to be here, Mark. Happy to join, and some pretty exciting market dynamics going on. So happy to dive in.
Happy to dive in indeed. And then also joining us on the program this week, the uncleist of Mike's, Mr. Uncle Mike Tosaw from St. Charles Wealth Management. And Henry, you could sit aside for a minute, because Uncle Mike and I, unfortunately, have some very sad news. I see our people filing into our live chat. That's the first thing they're all saying. Did you see the news? Yes, unfortunately, we saw the news. A bad week for people who are fans of the 80s. First, the Prince of Darkness, Ozzy Osbourne, and everyone says they go in threes. Then, of course, the son, Theo from The Cosby Show. And if that's not enough, the third one now, hitting a little closer to home for Uncle Mike and I. We did this 80s wrestling segment on this show for years. The quintessential 80s, the quintessential professional wrestler, period. Say what you will about the guy, and the guy is pretty terrible. I think that's pretty well known. But if you divorce the guy from the character of Hulk Hogan stands alone on the Mount Rushmore of 80s and all-time pro wrestling. He is the most popular pro wrestler in the history of time. Just a wild thing. He passed away before the show. Uncle Mike, I know you saw this as well. I know your heart is heavy with grief. Now, I guess we have to continue to pray for the continued health of Bret the Hitman. He's got about all we got left, Uncle Mike. But what are your thoughts on the one, the only, the immortal Hulk Hogan, sir?
Yeah, I can't think of anybody else that's left from that era, quite honestly. I mean, Ric Flair was more of an NWA
He
guy.
was. Ted DiBiase is still around, but he's also a bit of a scumbag in real life. And then, I guess maybe if you count later era, late 80s, early 90s, you have Shawn Michaels and Taker. They're still around, but they were kind of later as well. Demolition's still around, thankfully, so we got them, the greatest tag team of all time.
Hey, that was settled a long time ago with our audience.
I think one of the Bushwhackers is still alive, but yeah, not many. It is weird that Hogan, the most iconic of them all, outlived pretty much all of them as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's sad in terms of like what Hogan represented in the 80s. Train, say your pride, train, take your vitamins, say your prayers. I mean, I believed in all that when I was a kid, and Hulk Hogan was the man back then. He wasn't my favorite wrestler, but he was definitely up there, and he represented what 80s wrestling is all about, in my opinion. Unfortunately for the take your vitamins, his vitamins were steroids in a lot of areas. But I mean, with what he represented, the positive that he did bring to kids of my era, I mean, man, It does hurt to see him go, not going to lie. And, like you said, it comes in threes. We lost Theo and we lost Ozzy Osbourne all in the same few days pretty much. And, I mean, and I'll honor Hulk Hogan by saying it. Hulk Hogan may be dead, but Hulkamania will never die. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, as a kid, I hated Hogan as well. I was a Warrior kid. When Warrior beat him and the IC belt triumphed over the WWE. It was a great moment of childhood. I loved it. So to see all those vitamin sucking Hulkamaniacs get it put to him, I was excited for that. But even still, I used to watch Hulk Hogan's Rock and Wrestling. Everyone did. Hogan was more iconic than any wrestler is today, and probably ever will be. So it's just wild. He
was, and I had the Hulkamania workout set as a kid. That was the first weights I ever lifted.
I could see, baby Uncle Mike,
3-pounders.
Were you rocking the headband while you were doing it?
Maybe.
I could totally see it. I could see you as a Hulkster kid. I could see you as one of the little Hulkamaniacs.
I mean, the Road. I loved all wrestling, and the Road Warriors over in the AWA at the time were my favorite wrestlers. But I had so much respect for Hulk Hogan with what he was doing, and he wasn't my favorite, but he was Hulk Hogan. You had to love him and respect him in general. So
it is weird. It's also, for as popular as he was, I don't think anyone had a worse second act post pro wrestling than him. It just nonstop horrible thing after horrible thing. In fact, he showed up a few months ago, maybe 6 months ago or so, in a WWE event to push his new bear, Jimmy Hart in hand, playing the music, and he got booed out of the arena. People were just done with this guy. He was such a toxic human being. And go look up the stories. I don't think I've ever heard a good story about this guy behind this terrible. He knew he was the biggest star in pro wrestling, and he lived that way. And everyone else was kind of in his shadow, at least how he viewed it. But just wild stuff. I'll just leave this one other anecdote. I kind of learned myself what a terrible guy he was. A couple of years ago, I was, getting gas somewhere, and I went into the place to pay, and I saw a Hulk Hogan officially licensed cotton candy flavored vape. And it was obviously aimed to kids.
Oh my
I thought to
gosh.
myself, Jesus, has this guy sunk this low? He is licensing his name to sell vapes, cotton candy flavored vapes to kids. The answer was yes, which is probably why that guy got booted out of the building not too long ago.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, I was like, does he not have enough money? But apparently not. So yeah, personally a complete disaster, but you can't argue with the icon that was Hulk Hogan. All right, I will spare Henry any more 80s pro wrestling as we keep on rolling into a little bit of the old trading block.
It's time to break down the latest topics, trades, and trends in the world of options. It's time for the Trading Block.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Trading Block, the portion of the show where we break down what the heck is trading out there. And it's another kind of weird one on the vol scene. Certainly, we'll get there in a second. Maybe not weird, just kind of surprising that we hit that level at this point of the year. But as we're kicking off the show, the S&P's kind of been flirting. All the major indices have been kind of flirting with a little bit of green, a little bit of red. Right now, the S&P is green again, up about 0.25%. The Dow is red, off about 0.4%. And the Nasdaq's ticking back up about 1/3%. All of them were flirting with red on the day, ever so briefly. And then our old pal VIX Cash at 15.25. Yeah, it puts it down a little over a point, about 1.1 points from where it was on the Monday show. But the headline today on the vol side is that we actually broke the 15 handle ever so briefly. Got down to 14.95. Yeah, we kissed a 14 handle today in VIX Cash. It immediately vanished. We got back up to 15.25 pretty quickly. But still, just seeing that 14 handle tick in there kind of gives me the heebie-jeebies. I think the Rock Lobster, by the way, you know Hogan news is a big deal when even the Rock Lobster, who hates all 80s wrestling, is reaching out during the show about Hulk Hogan because he knows we're going to be talking about it. And even he heard about it on the shores of Maine. So that's how you know it's a big deal. But that said, he was saying earlier this week that, he was seeing a little bit of a 2.0 of the Trump regime when it comes to vol. And I said, don't say that. We don't want another 9 handle. So when I saw the 14 handle flick on my screen this morning, I got a little bit of PTSD. Obviously, a long way to go between 14 and 9, but still. I don't like seeing those lower levels, unless, of course, you're loading up on downside puts, in which case you're happy as a clam. Mr. Flowmaster, first off, you're enduring memories of Hulk Hogan. No, I'm just kidding. I won't make you go down that road. Instead, what's catching your eye in a wild day in the market? And what were your thoughts when we kissed a 14 handle today in VIX, sir?
Well, actually, I was just talking to my colleague Mandy Zhu about that because this is the lowest VIX has been since February. And, kind of seems like all the problems that we saw in, kind of the spring are still problems. But you do have to look at what the realized volatility has been, and it has been way down into the single digits. In fact, I think that the last, I think we've been in like realized vol around 7% for most of this month. Okay. And today's the 26th. So things have really, really quieted down since kind of the April tariff shocks. And volatility, it's a forward looking measure. However, it is very strongly influenced by recent volatility because if you buy options, the realized volatility is really going to control kind of your decay. So having such low realized vol, and the market really basically trudging up. I actually ran some data just because I was lucky enough to be in a meeting with a Bloomberg economist yesterday in Chicago at the post office. And one thing he just kind of casually mentioned, he said, yeah, it's really surprising that the market's so much higher than it was in, late March because, it's pretty clear there's going to be some level of tariffs. And I was walking out of the room with John Hyatt, who runs our Cboe Labs team. And he said, well, is the market higher or is it really just getting dragged up by a few, the Mag 7 kind of names? So I ran the data. And it's really kind of astounding if you look at what some of the sectors have done since, and I'm not even talking about trying to buy the bottom in April, just since the end of March. You've got technology. The XLK ETF is up 26%. Okay, if you bought the bottom in April, you're up 44%. Okay, this is a massive sector. We're not talking about picking some weird little name. The industrials are up about 18%. Financials are up around 6%. And healthcare, the losers are energy and healthcare. Those are actually still lower, down by about 7%. So it really is interesting. But I mean, the reality is, despite all the kind of scary situations going on out there, realized volatility is low, and the market is doing really, really well. Right, we're up 8% year to date now. We were down about 12% at the bottom there. So market's strong. Realized vol is low. There's just a lot of optimism about how things are going to play out. Whether or not that's warranted is a different question. But really, the market is in risk-on mode, and realized volatility is low. So that makes implied volatilities, basically hang pretty low, and that's where we are.
I have to get Mandy on vol views one of these days to share her thoughts on the broad macro vol. I know she's got some interesting musings over there. I haven't chatted with her in quite a. She was on vol views a while ago, but it's been a bit. I have to catch back up with her. But that said, even our listeners on Twitter and others are sharing their thoughts. They're worried about they're doing wellness checks on us. They're worried about us. Luckily, Uncle Mike and I, not big Hogan kids. Otherwise, we probably would be a lot sadder than we are right now. And Warrior already passed away, so we've already had the big trauma in our lives. And of course, Uncle Mike's beloved Road Warriors, both past tense as well. So we've all felt our 80s rest. And of course, Macho. We can go on. Andre. All people I liked more than Hogan. But that said, Mr. Uncle Mike, sir, first off, how funny is it our listeners are doing wellness checks on us? And B, what's catching your eye out there in a kind of half Uncle Mike type of day?
Well, it's a real Uncle Mike type of day, because never before in the history of the entire stock market has there ever been a better time to sell than today. New all-time highs in the S&P 500 today, so that's always exciting. Not saying you should sell right now by any means, but we are at all-time highs, and that's always an exciting way to start off the show. By all means, we're actually we hit them earlier before the pre-show, but as of right now, we're still like only probably maybe less than 2 points away from the highs of the day and the highs of all time. So that's always exciting in the S&P 500. We're in the midst of earnings season as we go on over the course of these next few weeks. So that's something that we're also going to be needing to see. And not to take too much away from around the block, but one of the things I think is going to be interesting to see how the markets react is because I believe we're supposed to start getting tariff money coming in early August, if I'm not mistaken. And so I don't know if that's necessarily going to be good or bad for the market, because in the modern times with which we live, sometimes good is bad and bad is good. So once it actually happens, that might bring tariffs back into the forefront of the news, and it might make the markets go down. Or because of the fact that maybe we've cut all these deals, that might just be the beginning of a major rally. I will say this, in 2025, this has never been a year. I've never had a year in my 20 or so years that I've been doing this that I have wanted to expect the unexpected any more than I have this year. I've said it several times. This is the year of the collar, and the hedged equity, I think, is very important this year, especially if the VIX is going to go to 14 and less. So I think those are some important things with which we need to look at. In terms of the sectors, I think Henry hit the nail on the head in terms of how much XLK has gone up since March. That's a big deal. And just in looking at some of the individual names, Microsoft, I believe it's a new all-time high for Microsoft again today at 512. When Microsoft, such a big behemoth of a company, is making those moves, it's difficult for the market not to go higher. JP Morgan, that's another name that we follow and that we have in our triple income portfolio. That's knocking on the door of 300. We might hit 300 today in JP Morgan. If you look at the movement that's had, it's been quite a bit. And so when you have those large stocks doing those big things, it's difficult for the markets not to go higher. And that is what I'm seeing today, Mark.
Let's see what we're seeing out here in the rest of the market, listeners. Let's kick it off in VIX land. You know what? VIX doesn't seem to be reacting much to breaking the 15 handle or to the passing of Hulk Hogan. I think that would at least add a couple of 100,000 contracts to the vol landscape, but the answer is no. Only 315 on the tape out there in VIX land today. We haven't seen it this quiet in a little bit. That said, you look at it through the context of the newly lower ADV back down to about 721. Still decently respectable given the time of year that it is out there, listeners. Usually we expect even lower in July heading into August. But that said, 315, when you see it in that context, is not the worst thing you could have. The hot dog, the big hot option out there today in VIX, listeners, 28,000 of the AUG 60 calls, 6 O's. We've had some interesting things lighting up the tape. If you're wondering what they're going up for today, listeners, those are going up for a dime. Are you down for a little bit of a dime for the AUG 60s, listeners? Looks like we might have an AUG 40, 47.5, 60. Maybe it's a fly or something along those lines going up out. It's hard to tell if it's all 1-to-1 or on a ratio. It might be a fly, but just something with a 2x 60 kicker. Either way, 60's taking the top spot today. Without those, we'd not even be north of 300,000 today. So kind of a sleepy day. Is it a sleepy day in SPY land? The answer is no. SPY actually putting up some numbers out there today. So SPY reacting to the passing of Hulk Hogan, of course. What else could it possibly be? 5.1 million contracts already on the tape. The ADV, 8.05 million out there. So SPY looking decently spicy. I had to admit, I did not expect SPY to, again, maybe you've hit some new all-time highs, you flirt with red intraday. A little bit of that whipsaw action usually tends to drive a little bit of paper, and that is pretty much what we're seeing. By the way, I'm looking right now, I see a contract expiring in August going up in the top 20 today. We haven't seen that in SPY in quite some time. So by my math, that is 2, that is 4, that is 5, actually no, 7 of the SPY top 20 not expiring today. That also maybe kind of shows you, despite the fact that it's more active than you might think, a little bit of a different makeup than we usually see out there in SPY, which is usually just going the way of the dodo today whenever possible. The S, 2.3 million. So again, looking decently active out there. The ADV is 3.6 million, so clearly we're going to hit that. By the way, the hot option in the S right now is 6380s. 102,000 of those bad boys have gone up today. And looking at the S doesn't care about anything beyond today's closing bell. It is 20 for 20, 0 day all the time out here in the S. So 6380s, maybe we kissed it intraday. I'll have to go check, but can we close north of that? We've seen a lot of paper going to die if you've been listening to our hot options report on the intraday there in the S and all these indexes that are so 0 day heavy. Can we get back up to 6380 today? I guess we'll find out. Small caps also looking decently hot. 800,000 contracts on the tape. The ADV out in small cap land, 1.35 million. So definitely seems like it's on pace to hit that today. And the Qs looking pretty much exactly where we expect them this time of the show. 2.25 million. That is pretty much our expected number. Maybe you expect a little bit higher these days, around 2.5 million, given the fact that it was so active. But 2.25 used to be our benchmark, so we could easily use that. The ADV, 3.7 million, so definitely on pace to hit that out there. And if you're wondering, let's be fair, why not? Let's do it for the Qs as well. Even Steven. All right, let's see here. It looks like we are not 20 for 20. We've got 2, 4, 5, 6, even a September contract sneaking in to the top 20 today. September 567s. You don't see that in any of the other, the S or the SPY for certainly. It looks like we have 6, looks like we have 7, again, in the top 20 in the Qs. Going out not today, including 1 in September. Wow, 567. So we're at 565.80 right now, listeners. So interesting stuff out there. Is it also interesting in the single name equities? Decently active day. Cost you 355,000 contracts to break into the top 10. So that's good. 250 is our threshold for respectability. 350, now you're starting to get kind of active. 450, you're lighting the tape on fire. Not quite there, but 355, that's definitely good. That gets us to our old pal Mara, and Mara's been lighting up the tape of late. It's been a while since we've seen them in the top 10, and then yesterday and now today breaking into the top 10 back-to-back. So Mara bringing a little bit of crypto love. I know Uncle Mike loves that. Bringing a little bit of crypto love onto the show today. We'll be able to hold on to that number 10 spot when it's time for the hot options report later today. I guess we'll find out. Mara 17 1/3, off about a quarter today. You know, we've talked about Mara for a long time on the crypto rundown, and it just kept vacillating between 15 to the downside and 30 roughly to the upside. it was one of the more reliable range-bound names out there. You could trade it pretty well. So much so that we kind of stopped talking about it. It was kind of boring. And then earlier this year, it finally broke through that 15 handle to the downside for the first time in a while, and it kind of languished there for a while. It got down as low as looks like about $10.50 in the big sell-off on April 8th. Since then, it's been all upside all the time. Back up to about a 17 handle. Actually got up nearly 20 just yesterday. So, no, actually, that was last Thursday. So about $20, $19.97. So back in that range. Will it stay there again? I guess we'll find out. Either way, number 10, it's our old pal Mara. Number 9, my old stomping grounds, Intel, 22 3/4, off $0.0075, or a little over 3%. Doing about 362,000 contracts. Intel 22 3/4, like we said. Intel's a weird one. Remember for a little while there, about a year ago actually, it was getting all that meme stock love. It was back up to about $31. It was getting all the love. Then it kind of fell off a cliff a year ago. Of course, August 5th meltdown happened. It got down to about 18 and change. And it slowly climbed its way back up. Got back up in February, right around Valentine's Day, to $27. Then they crushed it again. June 2nd, it was down to, looks like actually April 8th, it got down to 17 and change. So it's been slowly clawing its way back up to 22 3/4 right now. But Intel's kind of a weird one out there. Is it a kind of a bit of a darling? Is it an also-ran? Depends on the day, I suppose. Intel, number 9, 362 on the tape. Number 8, the Fruit Company, all the way down at number 8. If you've been listening to our hot options report, man, we picked a great time to launch it because the top 10 has been extra wild, extra spicy this last week and change. Crazy names like Open kicking their way, not just into the top 10, but all the way to the top, kicking Nvidia and Tesla to the curb. How often do we see that? So it's been wild. Lucid's been in there. A lot of newcomers shaking up the top 10, which is always fun to see, which is why it's interesting to see Apple all the way down at number 8. What's kicking Apple to the curb today? I guess we'll find out. Apple, by the way, looking frothy, 214.87, up about $0.0075. So continuing its move away from that par strike that it seemed like it was glued at for a long time. Apple, number 8, 532 on the tape. You know it's earnings season when we see this number 7 popping in here, because we never see this one. This is Goog, not Goog L, a.k.a. Class A, but old school Goog Class C. We never see this one in the top 10, which means obviously it's earnings season. Alphabet had their earnings last night. Good old Goog, 194, roughly up about $2.50, 1.25%. Good for number 7, 543. I have a feeling we'll see its sibling coming up in a little bit. Number 6, it's the Amazonians, 232.25, up nearly $4, or 1.75%. I'm not sure what. Oh, looks like an analyst decided to go crazy with their stock price. I'm wondering what is driving Amazon out there. But nonetheless, 232 out there right now for the Amazonians. Number 6, 660 on the tape. Number 5, AMD, 162.5, also up about $4 or 2.5%. So a good day for them. Their CEO praised American manufacturing. Okay, is that enough for a stock pop? Apparently it is. Or more buyers than sellers, probably, listeners. Number 5, AMD, 676 on the tape. Number 4, yes, falling all the way. I use air quotes, all the way to number 4. It's Open. I love to get the Flowmaster sauce maybe a little bit in the odd block on the saga that has been Open of late. This is a stock we used to joke about on Oddities a year and change ago. Fell all the way to 40, 50 cents about a month ago. You could have bought all of the forever calls you wanted, listeners, for 40 to 50 cents. Then the stock rallies all the way up to $3, then to $5 intraday on Monday after our show. People paying 60, 70 cents for the 5 calls expiring this week. Guess how that one worked out? Not too well. The stock's $2.50 right now. So they were paying 1.5, 2x the entire value of the stock a few weeks ago for the calls expiring at the end of this week. You know my thoughts on doing that. Good thing the Viceroy not here to hear that. He would certainly have some thoughts on it. Either way, number 4, Open, back active again, up about $2.50, up about 1/4 or 12%, putting up 750,000 contracts. I know some of our pro members are talking about dabbling in on some of that 2-strike and actually doing pretty well earlier this week, just kind of rolling the bones, picking them up for a dime, 15 cents, and letting them go for 3, 4, 5x that. So not a bad do, as the kids say. But yeah, this has been a wild one. Clearly, a lot of people have been slinging some Open. Again, I'm sure the Flowmaster has some thoughts. We'll get there in a second. Number 3, the other half of the alphabet equation, Class A, 947 on the tape for them. Good old Goog L. Also up, obviously, today, about $2.50, trading right around 192.5. And then number 2, kicked to number 2. It's Nvidia, 1.51 million. Nvidia, 173.5, up about 2 3/4 or 1.6%. So Nvidia having another good day out there. What could kick them to the curb? You probably know what it is by now. It's Tesla, 2.7 million. They had earnings last night. Spoiler alert, they screwed the pooch off 28 handles, or a little over 8, about 8.5% right now. See, how low did they get intraday? They got down to about the 300, the par strike exactly, before bouncing off of it. Clearly, things in Muskland aren't great. Go figure. The demand for EVs is kind of softening, or maybe at the very least has plateaued. And so, and then some of the other things they've spent heavily on, not exactly delivering. So, and he's obviously a polarizing figure. So I don't see a lot of pluses there, but nonetheless, the stock sold off to about the par strike, kind of leveling out at 305 right now. Good for the number 1 spot, 2.7 million. And if you like more hot earnings action, you're in the right place, listeners. I had American Airlines today, Nokia, Dow, Southwest Airlines all popping off today, as well as our aforementioned Intel. Earlier this week, we had Coke, GM, Hasbro, of course, Tesla, Alphabet, IBM. Haven't mentioned them, but IBM popped off yesterday. Chipotle, Alaska Airlines, so all kinds of stuff out there. And luckily for you, because we like you folks, updated earnings move results, and earnings season reports. Let's go out to, so many here, and I want to get to the Flow Master. Let's go out to American Airlines. They were before the bell here today. 1268 is where they went into their announcement. They were pricing in 5.4%. They delivered 8.4% to the downside and still hanging out about that level right now. So not a great day for them. American Airlines, love Southwest Airlines for the bell as well. 37.5 is where they were trading. They were pricing in 5.9%. They moved the exact same percentage, down 8.4%. So kind of moving in lockstep with American right there. So Southwest, maybe folks not liking their new seating plans. Tesla, I just broke it down for you. You don't need me to hit it for you again, but they were pricing in 6.9%, so they did outperform their straddle there. Alphabet, they were yesterday after the bell. They were at 190.25. They priced in 5.6%. They delivered, as of this report, at least 1.8%. Obviously, they moved a little more since then. So not a banger for Alphabet, at least from a overall earnings vol perspective out here. Man, there are so many. You can check them all out for yourselves. TheOptionsInsider.com. Click on the Options News and Articles tab. And because we like you folks, they are completely free. Really quickly, Intel's after the bell today. 23.5 is where they were when we ran this report. They were pricing in 216. In the past, they moved 1 3/4. So pricing in a little bit extra juice in Intel, which is kind of interesting out there. Another reason, of course, why they're making it into our top 10 today. There's so many out here, listeners. Let's go out. We talk about SoFi a lot. They're popping off, looks like next week as well. 21.5 is where they were trading. They're pricing in 231. In the past, they've moved $2 exactly. So a little bit of extra juice. And let's go all the way out to our buddy Mara. They're not popping off till next week as well, the 29th. 17.5 is where they were trading. Get this, they are pricing in $1.55. And in the past, they've moved $1.55. So keeping things pretty much exactly in line. Is the season in line? The season is looking spicy. All these names outperforming means our current season average is 135%, which is pretty wild. That's even more than our long-term average of 119%. Will it stay there? Probably not. That's just some near-term bias for the data. We only have, 115 names reporting so far. So a lot more to go. Stay tuned to the website for more data as we stay tuned to the Odd Block for a little bit of the Flowmaster.
It's time to break down the most interesting, unusual, and downright questionable options activity that's been identified by theoptionsinsider.com. It's time for the Odd Block.
All right, let's not bury the lead any longer. I'm sure everyone wants to know the Flowmaster's thoughts on the options story of the week, indeed of the summer. It is open. Like I said, 50 cents, all you wanted for the forever call not too long ago, Mr. Flowmaster. And then this massive resurgence, 10x, all the way up to $5 on the back of apparently just meme stock madness and a little bit of a sprinkling of short squeeze in there. and that was enough to carry it not just to $5, but to the top of the options chart, sir, which is wild. What are your thoughts on the saga, the drama, the soap opera that is Open, sir?
Wait, I'm here.
There
Sorry.
is. All right. Lost your video, lost your audio.
So,
I thought maybe you lost power there in the.
No. Everything is good here at Cboe. So, no, it's a funny story. So, Monday, they booked me to go on Yahoo Finance TV, and I sent over some notes and said, yeah, we're going to talk about earnings in the Mag 7 stocks because 6 of them are reporting, basically kind of now. And as I'm running out, I get a note from our comms team, and they're like, hey, she wants to talk about Open. And I was like, I don't even know what that is. So I pull it up, and it traded 1.5 million contracts, and the stock's up about 70% as I'm getting on the train. And so I did, basically get my arms around it. And as I was on air, it traded up to like 492, I think, which was almost the high that it got to. And I talked about, it was a kind of your classic meme momentum craziness. Volatility was around 500%. The stock, as you said, went from about 55 cents to a couple bucks, and then to 4 something. It was the most active single stock by over 1.5 million contracts on Monday, 3.5 million contracts, it's really kind of unheard of. I guess it's a real testament to what low friction in trading can do, because if it trades like water and you get a lot of people basically kind of punting and taking positions, and I know personally, I know a few people that said this is ridiculous and they bought some puts, but you have a lot of dynamics at play. You have a 500 vol name, and if I was actually talking to Nishank, who's been on your show, on this show, and he was a put buyer, and I said, the problem is that when you buy 500 vol, even when the stock comes down 20 or 30%, there's a lot of room for that.
Yeah,
vol
you're still
to
choking on it.
to collapse. Exactly. I mean, there's stories about when GameStop was the same thing back in 2021, right? It went from $12 to $400 and something dollars. Volatility went from about 50 to about 400, and there's stories about how some of the dealers sold puts and hedged the puts by selling stock and just got annihilated because they got killed on their short stock, and basically the puts didn't move because as the stock fired higher, volatility continued to go up. And it's really kind of one of those interesting little wrinkles in you have to anticipate kind of the behavior a little bit more than you do in a normal stock where most of the time stock goes down, volatility goes up, and vice versa. So this was kind of a wacky one. It has really calmed down. Volatility now is around only around 270%. Stock's around $2.5 now. So it's not quite as nuts. It's going to trade. Might trade 1 million contracts a day. It might trade 1 million contracts today. So, we may not have heard the last of this, but there, as I said at the beginning, there's a lot of optimism, exuberance. People are seem to be playing around and moving their capital very quickly this month. So. This is just another example. I kind of think I would stay away from it just because it feels like it's one that probably kind of come back to earth. But I think everybody knows when stocks are kind of getting memey, and there's plenty of other ones, you really got to watch out above.
We just put out a flash poll to our audience. Are you trading Open options? Heck yes or heck no, or you're just watching the madness? Just went live. We'll see what our audience has to say out there. I think a lot of them have been playing with it. A lot of them might be in your camp, Mr. Flowmaster. Just, you're right. 500 vol, just wild stuff. You might want to be on the sidelines for that one. But let's keep on rolling into some names folks aren't on the sidelines for. It's Bloom Energy, ticker symbol B. I haven't talked about this one in a little bit. This is the old solid oxide fuel cell name. We've joked about fuel cells many times on this show and on the Options Oddities show. They're hot again. They're cold again. This is the sector of the future. This is dumpster fire sector. You've been hearing for decades about how fuel cells are going to revolutionize everything. And spoiler alert, they haven't, at least not yet. But it looks like Something is popping here in Bloom Energy, trading 33.5 bucks, up 670 or 25% almost. So clearly the Bloom is back on the rose. Digging in here, it looks like they struck a deal to power Oracle's data centers. So they're going to keep just running in with fuel cells and hydrogen, just pumping truckloads of hydrogen day after day. That seems logistically challenging. I'm guessing they'll make a pipeline or something. But yeah, there we go. So I guess the Bloom is back on the rose, pun intended, for Bloom Energy. Let's look really quickly on the year. Obviously, it's hot for the year. It's hitting its high for the year right now. A year ago was 14.5 bucks. Sold off back in the August meltdown to about 10 bucks and kind of languished there until the election. And then apparently the optimism that took a lot of these names post-election carried this one all the way up to 27.5 bucks by the end of November. Then it kind of slowly drifted back down. By April 8th, it got back down to about 16 bucks. So it has since doubled, but even a week ago, it was trading 24 bucks. So it's popped obviously hard off this news. Mr. Flowmaster, A, what are your thoughts on the fuel cell sector in general? It seems like it's on again and off again. Today, obviously an on again day. And then B, what's catching your eye in the Bloom, sir?
Yeah, I mean, it is, there's themes out there, and when it comes to energy, and big data centers for the AI revolution, there is a lot going on, right? You hear pretty wild kind of stories about portable nuclear reactors, and we know some of the cloud companies are buying or trying to lock up nuclear energy just to make sure they can power these things. So, so if the stock's going to go up 25% on headlines about some sort of an agreement related to that trend, it doesn't surprise me much. I've been in and out of this name a little bit in the past. Today, it's actually pretty interesting. So it's stuff with, we have 113,000 calls have traded. That's 9 times normal versus just 30,000 puts. And the biggest trade that I see out there looks like a calendar roll. So 9,000 of the August 35 to no 40 calls traded as a spread. It looks like it traded a little bit slow. So looks to me like they paid about $1.12. And this seems to be opening the November 40s. Okay, so that is a long call position out there, and closing the AUG 35s, which history shows those were entered in early July when the stock was around 28 bucks. So it looks like somebody did well there, and is really they're actually putting a little bit keeping their chips on the table as far as a bullish position in this. A few other spreads as well. I think that the energy sector in general, and it's interesting, right? I mentioned at the beginning, the traditional energy, oil stocks haven't done very well this year. But you have kind of the alternative stuff and the energy that's just more tied into AI. Names like this one doing really well. So I think that's gonna be a kind of a hot little segment for the rest of the year.
All right, let's keep on rolling out to the airlines. I just mentioned American Airlines popping off before the bell. Not looking great. Looks like they lowered their profit forecast. Never a good thing. Stock 1162 off a little over $1, or closing in on 10%, about 9% right now. On the year, it's been a topsy-turvy one for American. They were 1017 a year ago, so still up $1.50 from there. And they rallied all the way up to start the year, January, about 19 bucks. And since then have kind of fallen off a cliff. That said, they did get down to about $9 in the April nadir, so they still are above that. But obviously, this outlook not looking great. Mr. Flowmaster, what'd you spot in good old AAL, sir?
Yeah, so I mean, we're nice and thick into earnings, and so there's a lot of looking at what the expected magnitude of the move is. Basically, looking at the straddle going into earnings. Tesla's a good example today. As you mentioned, the stock's kind of getting clobbered, but everybody knew that the earnings were not going to be very good, and that stock's down basically 8.8%, which is almost exactly where the straddle was yesterday. So AAL, this one is a little bit interesting because I see a very big call buyer yesterday. So if you look at the biggest open interest increases, that's the way we see new positions. There, I see 89,000 of the July 25th. These expire tomorrow. 13 calls. Those were opened yesterday. Okay, that's a very, very specific earnings trade. About 120,000 traded yesterday to open these 90,000. They were all buyers, and they were all in the 24 to like 40 cent range. So the VWAP on the day was 34 cents. Those are sucking wind, right? Stock is nowhere near there. It's going the wrong way. But what I see today is a buyer of another 12,000 of the SEP 13 calls, paying 34 cents. So it seems to be kind of in that same price range they seem to like. I'm trying to decide how I feel about in terms of if they've lost a boatload of money, right, like $2.5 million if it's all one buyer yesterday, and they're kind of plowing a little bit more in, it almost feels like somebody's just kind of averaging down. My general view on the airlines is they're gonna be okay, but obviously this is pretty decent move lower for American. So this looks to me like somebody looking for some strength. I mean, you never know. You could get some kind of government action as well. I'll tell you one thing that this economist said yesterday in Chicago, because we were asking, specifically, as I said, he's a little bit bewildered at the fact the market just kind of kept on going up, even though tariffs were certainly going to be here. But we asked about volatility shocks, and because we have SPX and we have VIX, and those are the biggest products for trading vol. And he said that he had a funny stat. He said that currently about 30% of the headlines on Bloomberg are related to Trump. So 30% of the news stories that go by are directly or indirectly related to Trump. With Biden, it was 10%, and with Obama, it was 3%. And really what he was saying is, like, you're going to continue to get some volatility out of the fact that this is the way that he does things. So, it wouldn't surprise me if airlines sooner or later kind of get into the mix. So looks like somebody getting long. I'm not too sure. I don't know about, throwing good money after bad, but it does seem like they like the stock, and down here at $11.50 or so, maybe it's some sort of a bottom.
All right, and really quickly, let's get out to Wendy's. We'll do an extra special fourth one, listeners. Wendy's 10.78 right now, off about $0.50, about 5% today. Looks like they have a new president or new CEO, something along those lines. On the year, they had a nice rally back to about $21 almost back in October of last year. They're hanging out pretty close to the low for the year right now. The low is 10.30, so I guess not a great year for the Wen. What caught your eye, Mr. Flowmaster?
Yeah, so in Wendy's, so the total volume is heavy, 2 times the normal call volume, 5 times the normal put volume. And when I look at the blocks, there are 2 kind of standout blocks. One is a seller of 12,000 of the step 9 puts. 15 cents is what they collected. So that is, we used to call it a line in the sand type of trade, where somebody says, listen, if it goes down there, I want to own it at 9. So that's significant. They're taking a decent amount of risk. It's an opening trade. And the other decent sized trade is a buyer of some step 13 calls. That buyer paid 39 cents on a sweep. So just 2 directionally bullish trades, and a little bit like American, it kind of seems like they might be picking their spot. Also, the fact that the stock is near the low end of its range might be attractive, or maybe they like those Frosties.
Those Frosties are delicious as we keep on rolling and go around the block.
It's time to tell you what we'll be watching on our trading screens until the next episode. It's time for Around the Block.
Let's check in right now really quickly with some of our polls, flash polls and questions of the week. This just went live a few minutes ago. Our poll on Open. Are you trading options on Open? Our audience splits 42.9% each saying heck yes and hell no. And then 14.3% of you saying I'm just watching the madness, kind of like the Flowmaster. So I suppose if you add those 2 together, then over half of you are not trading options on open right now. We talked earlier this week, I think right after the Monday show, about these Circle July 445 calls that were trading 20,000 times for 15 cents when the stock was around 200 and change. We just said, are you a buyer sold to you, or just what the hell? What the hell is the right answer? And 50% of you went that way. 31.3%, I'm glad to see, said sold. 15 cents for those things. That's wild. 18.8% of you wanted to buy those for whatever reason, which is interesting in and of themselves. And then right now we have a flash poll and then a kind of pick your poison fun flash poll, and then our actual question of the week. The flash poll is out to Palantir, Uncle Mike's favorite. We saw the D-Spar puts trading earlier this week about 7,500 times for about exactly $4. We said at that price, you a buyer or a seller, and almost 2/3 of you, 61.5%, want to sell them. I think you probably got to lean that way. But, 38.5% of you want to buy them, including, looks like our good buddy, Mr. Age Delaquarius, one of our pro members. He says it's risen from the dead more times than Jason Voorhees, but he'd still be a buyer of those puts. So I can see an argument for that, too, if you want to. This guy says this tough call, Melvin Nixon. Puts are cheap for a reason. Palantir's volatility makes it a gamble either way. So, yeah, 2/3 of our audience leaning towards selling them, which I kind of expected. And then speaking of selling juice, our actual question of the week right now that is live, that is splitting our audience. We said right now, this time of year, right now in the market, what is the biggest challenge facing your options trading? Gave you 4 choices. Too many things to trade. The spreads are too wide. A bad execution or bad fills. Or we know our audience trying to find that juice to sell. Mr. Uncle Mike, what are your thoughts on if there is an issue facing your options trading? B, which way do you think our audience is going? And C, what are you keeping an eye on in the market for the rest of the week until the Monday show, sir?
Well, I'm pretty thankful I don't have any issues in my trading. The last time I had issues in my trading was probably over 10 years ago when I realized I was trading illiquid stuff. And so I just stopped doing that. There's plenty of opportunities in the liquid stuff. In terms of our audience, I would say that maybe not enough juice to sell. I know we have a lot of premium sellers out there. So that's something that we need to keep into consideration. And then in terms of what I'm watching for the markets going into our next show, wanting to see where we're reactant in the all-time highs of the marketplace. We're still within 5 points of the all-time highs of the S&P. Continuing to watch that and seeing if silver is going to make another run. It shot up like it did, and it's kind of taking a little bit of a breather right now and seeing if it's going to make another run at 40 in the near term.
Mr. Flowmaster, same question for you. What issue, if any, do you think is besetting our audience? And then B, what are you keeping an eye on until your next appearance next Thursday, sir?
I would probably say that the not finding enough juice to sell. I mean, there's a little bit of a sweet spot for volatility, and I kind of think it tends to be when VIX is between like 17 and 20. So 15 means that some things are just pretty anemic. And as Mike said, there also is an issue of the top names really dominate, and they always have, but it can be hard to go looking around for the higher vol names just because they can be pretty liquid. For the next week, I mean, I'm going to be watching. We do have some earnings still to come. Robinhood and Coinbase, Amazon, Apple. Those are all next week. So that and just kind of trying to keep an eye on macro factors. Trying to stay a little bit ahead of things. We're at all-time highs. I think I might have said this last time. It's volatility is cheap, meaning that hedges are really not as costly as they are when people are getting really, really nervous. And it might be a good time to put on some hedges or kind of trim some delta one way or another. The other thing I'm going to rerun my inverted skew query to basically look at the count of names with call wings higher than put wings, because to me that's kind of an interesting indicator of just how exuberant the market is in the single stock world.
All right, and right now, listeners, you folks are lining up with not enough juice to sell, finding juice to sell, 40.5% of you. Number 2 is too many things to trade. I thought that might take it, but 37.8%. It is a tight battle between those two. Then about a tie for number 3, about 11% each for the spreads are too wide and bad execution / bad fills. All right, that music means we are done for the option block. Not done on the network, not by a long shot. If you need more in your lives, I'll be joined in a little bit by our good buddy Dr. Vix. It's going to be triple duty on the network this week. European Market Brief on Tuesday, joining us in a little bit on TWIFO, and then, of course, his usual appointed slot tomorrow on VolView. So if you need a little more Dr. Vix in your life, talking, let's say, energy, vol, and everything else, join us on TWIFO in a little bit. But before we go, Uncle Mike, sir, if folks want more Uncle Mike goodness in their lives, where should they go? What should they do?
My website, stcharleswealth.com. Book an appointment to have a conversation with me. I love talking to all of our audience members.
All right, and Mr. Flowmaster, same question. If they want more Cboe goodness in their lives, or maybe they just want to go deep diving into open, sir, and all the flow, where should they go? What should they do?
Just head on over to Cboe.com/RMA. It's Risk and Market Analytics. That's where all our platforms and data can be checked out. And you can also poke around Cboe.com. Somewhere there you can sign up for my annual State of the Industry update. And I just finished the mid-year look. So I'll make sure that you're on that list, Mark. And anybody can sign up for it. Just go to Cboe.com.
Cboe.com, the place to go to kick the tires and light the fires. If you're hanging out in the live, just hang out. We'll be back in a little bit with the aforementioned Dr. Vix. And you get a triple header in your ear holes, because we'll be back after that, talking all the wild flow for the day on the Hot Options Report, the latest smash hit out of the gate on the network. Thanks to all of you who've been checking out all the new shows. Then we're back again tomorrow, of course, Dr. Vix in hand again, and some other special guests. Who knows? Got to tune in to find out, to talk the wild vol. I got a feeling breaking the 15 handle and Vix is going to become a topic on that show, as well as, of course, coming back one final time for our pro members, talking unusual activity on options oddities. Where do you get that? The optionsinsider.com/pro. Then we wind up the week with the final Hot Options Report before we come back on Monday. Uncle Mike and the Rock Lobster doing battle yet again on the next episode of the Option Block. Stay safe out there, everybody.
The Option Block is brought to you by Cboe. Cboe's suite of S&P 500 index options, SPX and mini S&P 500 XSP options, allows traders to speculate on the direction of the market, generate income, and hedge for downside protection of their portfolio of stocks. No matter what kind of trader you are, there's plenty of useful information to take the guesswork out of creating your portfolio strategy and to help you make more educated moves in the market. Visit www.cboe.com/SPX today to learn more. The views expressed herein are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views of Cboe Global Markets Incorporated or any of its subsidiaries, collectively Cboe. The information provided is for general education and information purposes only. There are important risks associated with transacting in any of the Cboe products or any of the digital assets discussed here. Before engaging in any transactions in those products or digital assets, it is important for market participants to carefully review the disclosures and disclaimers contained at www.cboe.com/US_disclaimers. These products and digital assets are complex and are suitable only for sophisticated market participants. These products involve the risk of loss, which can be substantial and, depending on the type of product, can exceed the amount of money deposited in establishing the position. Market participants should put at risk only funds they can afford to lose without affecting their lifestyle. You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.